I was watching the YouTubes, and the algorithm fed me this interview with Jon Stewart by the Two Bears 1K podcast, which, if you don't know, is Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura. And for the most part, it was pretty basic bullshit, like about their kids and la da 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 da. But there's a point where, I mean, listen, I have a deep connection to Jon Stewart. I mean, even my set kind of looks like The Daily Show. I use like blues and stuff like that. So I'm looking for reasons to forgive this guy for how terrible he's been with everything. All right, admittedly. And I think this is pretty good. I think at the end of the day, these clips here show that he gets it to some degree, whether you like Trump or hate Trump, or whether he likes Trump or hates Trump. But anyway, let's just watch. And
in the way of, it is a protest for the status quo being so unsatisfactory for people. It's the kind of thing that, like, I remember this was 15 years ago, somewhere along the line, 20 years ago, there was a poll done. Everybody made a big deal of it. Who is the most trusted newsman or newscaster in America? And it was Tom Brokaw and Peter Jennings and Brian Williams and Diane Sawyer and Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
And Jon Stewart won running away.
Yeah.
And I kept trying to explain to people, like, I could have been dildo wrapped in gold and that would have won. Because what people are expressing in that poll is, I'm dissatisfied with the status quo and the establishment delivery of this service. They have lost my trust.
God damn it. He just fucking nailed it. Like, when you watch what he's been doing on The Daily Show, and even Bill Maher, all the guys like Jon Stewart and Bill Maher, it feels like they don't get what he just said about the status quo. But Jon Stewart just eloquently put into words exactly what's going on with Trump. People, like, I don't like Trump per se. I don't think he's any different than a lot of the fucking rich cunts in fucking politics. But he's something different. And that's what I think, that was the epiphany for me when I asked my working class friends, like, hey, what, like, Trump is a fucking rich guy who shits on a golden toilet. Why do you like him? And they're like, he's not a Bush or a Clinton. So clearly Jon Stewart gets that. And he just told you that he does. So let's keep watching.
And so people in my area, you know, I'm sure Maher gets it. Tucker Carlson gets it. Like, all the people in the space of giving opinions about the day's event. I mean, that's honestly, how did Trump become president?
Well, I was about to say,
same shit.
It's the same analysis, right? Because everybody who goes, how the fuck is this guy president? Or, you know, how is he getting this support? What most people you would hear, they're like, he's not like these other guys. You know, he's not from that political landscape where they say the right thing. And like, he was just this wild guy who was saying,
he is not a member of the anointed political class. We just talked about how, you know, voting in America is like choosing between two pre-selected candidates that the donors are fine with. And I think Trump probably fits into that realm anyway, but the fact that there's such an enormous pushback by the status quo against him is why people like him.
Things, and then that was exciting to people. It was exciting that somebody was,
and the wilder it would get, everybody kept saying, well, he's certainly, now that he said that, it's certainly done.
Over.
And everybody's like, he's going up in the, I think what ended up happening there is, it was like an antibiotic resistant strain of something. And so people kept saying, well, certainly if we hit it with strep and if we hit it with erythromycin and penicillin, it would have to die.
Sure.
And then it was just like,
nope.
Not even close.
It's too strong.
Too strong.
It's way too
just
strong.
Keeps going.
And no, and I think too, it's, you know, it seems like everything is being done to not have this guy, you know, on ballots and
everything other than just have a better idea.
Holy shit. See what I'm saying? Holy shit. This is what they were making fun of Carville for on Jimmy Dore the other day. Like, hey, we're throwing everything at these guys and nothing's working except having a better option, or like actually saying, hey, we're going to fucking do something for voters. And again, Jon Stewart right here proving he knows this shit. I haven't watched The Daily Show recently, admittedly, so maybe I'm missing it, and he really is laying it down. I think that if he was, that's probably why I haven't heard much about it recently, because he is saying some stuff to that effect, and it's not being like regurgitated by all the shit libs on Twitter. Anyway.
Just fucking beat him.
Yeah, exactly. That is not being done.
No.
But all these other things, and I feel like if they succeed in getting him convicted or off ballots,
right?
I do think people are going to lose their.
They won't. I don't think they'll succeed getting him off ballots in any way.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think that chance. I think if they had done, and again, part of this is his understanding of the system. Part of his appeal was the system is rigged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think everything he's experienced through here is an example of that, just not necessarily the way he thinks. I think it's showing if you've got money, doesn't matter how many felony counts they throw at you.
Yeah.
You can hold that off till you get granted complete immunity by becoming president of the United States.
So that's a side of it that I never really considered, but it's true too. I think what's going on with Trump is proof that there are really two legal systems. And if you're a guy like Trump who has a bunch of money in the bank, the system's not going to put you in jail. And so it's kind of just like a self-defeating exercise in a lot of ways, especially when you think about the reality that the people that are so overjoyed about Trump being prosecuted on paying hush money to Stormy Daniels were people who supported Bill Clinton through the Monica Lewinsky scandal. So, I mean, they've become the people that they supposedly hated, the hypocrites on the right, you know, who were like super concerned with family values until one of their senators, like that guy David Vitter, got caught banging prostitutes, you know, or one of them gets busted into they're anti-gay, and then like all of them are secretly gay and going to like, you know, gay bathhouses and stuff in DC. That's always how it works. Like when people start posturing and being overly pious on some shit like that, you know, it's because they're compensating for one of their cardinal sins.
States, but the difference is somebody can be right about a diagnosis and wrong about the remedy.
Mm-hmm.
So like he can diagnose the system as rigged, and it obviously is. I mean, when they talk about his real estate transactions and they talk about.
But I think the part of this that Jon Stewart maybe neglects to see or isn't seeing is that he's one of those people in that realm too. And people, that's why like the criticisms of Trump fall flat from people like him, because it's like, yo, dude, you're part of that cabal. Like if you have the resources and the money to live outside the legal system too, you know? And so like your self-righteousness and your piety and your, you know, democracy, Trump is such a threat. Like it just falls completely flat because you're one of those people. Like we can't take you seriously when you whine about Trump, you know?
Goes, that's just how things are done. Like you go to the bank, you lie about what you have, they give you more money than they should at a lower rate. And then when you go there, you lie about that, and then they give you, and you just go like, oh, really? That's how it is?
And this got me thinking too, like people lie on their resumes. People lie all the time. It's like American society is really built on lies in a lot of ways. A lot of people are living lies in their marriages. I was for a long time like, oh, it's because tradition, we stay married because that's how we're supposed to do it. And we're just going to live a sexless fucking life and like a bunch of schmucks because that's what the Bible says, you know? And that's the fucking house of cards that our American society is built on. It's a bunch of fucking hypocrites pretending to adhere to values that they violate every day in their personal lives.
And so the interesting thing is once that gets exposed, a reformer comes in and says, I'm going to straighten this out and make it fairer.
Again.
Because it's right. Special interests Yeah, you got to go down to Washington all the time, man. There's more defense contractor lobbyists than there are people in Congress.
Yeah.
They're outnumbered.
Sure.
And they are wined and dined.
Deep pockets.
You know, the greatest example is like Wall Street. You know, people in New York, the senators, the Congress people are supposed to be progressive. Wall Street gets away with a shit ton because they pay all those legislators. This would be the place where reform would have a home.
Yeah.
New York City. They're all like, well, maybe the tax should be 20% on capital gain. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if you have a hedge fund, it shouldn't get taxed like regular money.
So just to take a sidebar from this for a second, again, I think Jon Stewart's nailing it. He clearly gets where people are coming from, but this is the type of thing that really makes people think twice about Donald Trump for president. Listen to this.
Just few people know the
So this is Andrew McCabe, former director of the FBI.
inner workings of the FBI better than you do. And you've also personally experienced the pressure from Donald Trump. And when you see him promising this wholesale takeover of the Justice Department, I wonder how you worry about what that would look like.
Yeah, Caitlin, I mean, I worry a lot about it. And I think it's, you know, when you think about these things and you try to predict how Donald Trump is going to react or the steps he's going to take, you really don't have to go any further than listening to the things he says and does. I mean, his comments recently are offensive and horrendous, but they're not surprising in any way. He's been saying this for quite some time. I will be your retribution is his refrain to his supporters. So, you know him, you know what motivates him. He is not a person who is driven by principle or ideology. He is someone who's entirely transactional. And if he feels like he's been wronged in some way, then he focuses on revenge and vengeance. And so he's made it perfectly clear that that's what he's.
It's crazy how every accusation with these people is such a confession. Like, what are they doing right now? Complete lawfare through the courts. So this guy's worried that if the balance is a power tip, he might be the target. Now, even though he has had his guns aimed at the former president, and see, when I see this kind of stuff, because there's a lot of people on the left who are rightly critical of Trump, who are like, no, he ain't gonna do shit. Like the idea that he's gonna like clean anything out is a joke. But when I see this kind of stuff, like these kind of like admissions, I guess, from people like Andrew McCabe, who used to run the FBI, I think that's evidence that they're fucking scared that that maybe they will be a target if he gets back in. And so to me, I think that's a lot more evident or like valid evidence of why, like, if you're on the left, kind of like just sitting back, if you don't want to vote, just letting Trump win is good. Because first of all, people like that guy are scared of him. But second of all, it's going to change the dynamic to a place where all of a sudden the left is critical of the government again. And I think that dynamic combined, like if you listen to Trump talk on the campaign trail, he's talking about ending wars. He's talking about closing the borders. He's talking about all that stuff. So any of those causes that the left unites with the populist right on, we can work together to hold him accountable if he's president. I guarantee you, if Trump gets in and he doesn't pull back on Ukraine and doesn't, do something to stop the fighting in Gaza and stuff, the right will hold him accountable. And the left can join up with them to do that. But anyway, listen to the rest of this guy's panic-stricken.
Going to do. And in the process of seeking that, he is going to he runs the risk of really dismantling and greatly incapacitating the Department of Justice and the FBI. And that is something
that they should take that clip and run it as a commercial, like a campaign ad for Trump. Like, I just want to hear that one more time.
He is going to he runs the risk of really dismantling and greatly incapacitating the Department of Justice and the FBI. And that is something that Americans on both sides of the political aisle should be worried about.
Wow. That should be something that Americans on both sides of the political aisle should cheer and applaud and hope for, because it doesn't matter who your political enemies are. They have been targeted by the FBI now. MLK was targeted by the FBI. Malcolm X, targeted by the FBI. Trump, if you're on the right, targeted by the FBI. Steve Bannon, targeted by the FBI. There you go. We have a lot more in common than we care to admit, but let's keep listening to this douchebag.
Yeah.
We depend on those institutions to protect us.
Well, what do you think it's...
And he is
what
proposing
people
to tear
inside,
them down.
Yes, I know. If there's one thing Americans are worried about, it's they're like, what will I do if the FBI isn't there to protect me? Oh my God.
People inside the FBI think when they hear a comment like that?
And let me just say, I know that there are a lot of good people working in the FBI that have the best interests of the public and the country at heart. Like I don't want to seem like I'm blanket, but then you also look at the history, like I just mentioned, of J. Edgar Hoover and the shit they did to MLK and X, and you're like, okay, I'm not denying that there aren't probably a lot of good people. So if you're listening, FBI, yes, I respect that, a lot of you probably do this for the right reasons, but also understand that you're part of a very corrupt organization that needs reform.
It's terrifying. It's frightening. I have a lot of conversations with former colleagues, people who.
My viewer count went up when I started ranting about the FBI. I'm like, oh, FBI has joined the chat. Welcome.
Who are or were in the intelligence and law enforcement community and may have worked in, the Obama administration, other places. And, people are really trying to assess, like, what is life going to be like if Donald Trump wins a second term? And on a very personal level.
I think most people could just look at the last time he was president and go, it's probably going to be like that. It's going to be pretty much normal. And the press is going to be throwing a fucking temper tantrum, trying to tie him to Russia or white supremacy or whatever they can.
These are torturous discussions with their family members about whether or not they have to leave the country to avoid being unconstitutionally and illegally detained. I mean, people.
Does this guy hear himself like unconstitutionally and illegally detained? Like exactly what they're fucking doing to the former.
We're actually worried about being thrown in jail or grabbed in some sort of extrajudicial detention. And I think, as crazy as this sounds in the United States of America, I think people should really consider that these are possibilities. Listen to what the man says. He typically does what he says, as crazy as it seems. And that's really all the indicators you need.
If I'm the Trump campaign, I'm running that fucking footage as a campaign ad. Like, you will win a ton of people. Like, here's the former director of the FBI. We're really worried that Trump's going to dismantle the FBI and we'll have to go hide in other countries. Why would you have to do that? Why would you have to leave the country to avoid prosecution if you weren't guilty of anything? Because Trump is just weaponizing the justice system against us because he's such a terrible person, like we're doing to him right now. Anyway, back to Jon Stewart. John did a lot of kind of political advocacy for the 9/11 firefighters, and that's another reason I got a lot of respect for the guy. But in this, he talks about going to Congress, and let me find this.
Is an example of that, just not necessarily the way he thinks. I think about the remedy.
Mm-hmm.
So he can the bank, you lie about what you have, they give you more money than they should.
Okay, so let's start right here.
Talk about.
So basically, he kind of talks about the ramifications of the Trump case, and then he transitions into this thing where he goes into Congress with a bunch of people, and just listen to this, and we'll talk about it.
Everybody comes out and goes, that's just how things are done. Like, you go to the bank, you lie about what you have, they give you more money than they should at a lower rate. And then when you go there, you lie about that, and then they give you, and you just go like, oh, really? That's how it is? And so
yes, that is how American society works. It's a fucking house of lies.
The interesting thing is once that gets exposed, a reformer comes in and says, I'm going to straighten this out and make it fairer.
Again.
Because it's right. Special interests. Yeah, you got to go to Washington all the time, man. There's more defense contractor lobbyists than there are people in Congress.
Yeah.
They're outnumbered.
Sure.
And they are wined and dined.
Deep pockets.
The greatest example is Wall Street, you know, people in New York, the senators, the Congress people are supposed to be progressive. Wall Street gets away with a shit ton because they pay all those legislators.
Listen to this very closely.
This would be the place where reform would have a home.
Yeah.
New York City. They're all like, well, maybe the tax should be 20% on capital gain. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if you have a hedge fund, it shouldn't get taxed like regular money. And so you see how powerful, like they don't have fucking time. I remember when we went down there for the first version of what was called the PACT Act, which was that Toxic Exposure Act for veterans. So we got together a bipartisan group of Congress people, and we all sat around a table. And I was there with Rosie and Leroy Torres, who were going to lay out like what they'd been through over the last 10 years, what was going on these military bases, all the terrible health effects of the different things. It was very similar to the 9/11. We lay it all out, very compelling. They're all on board. And then they go, but here's the thing. So there's so much going on down here. Could you guys write it? The legislation. Could you write it? And I'm like, I could write a 10-minute bit about the legislation, but I don't know the first thing about it. They don't know the first. But in that moment, I thought, oh, that's how this shit happens. Mm-hmm. So imagine you're not trying to get health care for veterans. You're trying to get banking regulations eased so that you can make derivative swaps on mortgages and blow up the world financial system. And you go in and you say, oh, this is this thing and it makes a ton. And they go, it's so busy down here. Could you write it if I have to?
Right.
And they write it.
Wow.
So much of the legislation is influenced and written by the people it's supposedly reining in. And so there's like a wealth incumbency built into the system, or a legislative incumbency for these larger industries that weeds out competition. It infuses corruption and is really hard to stop. And what Trump is saying is, yeah, that system is rigged. But what he's not saying is, and I'll reform it. What he's saying is, so if you don't mind signing that deed over to me, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And that's the part that you know, he's not interested in a fairer system. He's interested in to the victor go the spoils.
And I think a lot of people at this point don't care. They're willing to hand it over to them because the people who have been running everything for such a long time are clearly not doing it in the best interests of the country. And to continue on this kind of thought process here, I want you to watch this really quick. And because what John is alluding to is a very clear in this scenario.
He has an AIPAC person.
What's that mean, an AIPAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your AIPAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for AIPAC. They're probably a constituent in your district, but they are firmly embedded in AIPAC. And
every member has something like this?
That's how it works on the Republican side. And when they come to DC, you go have lunch with them. And they've got your cell number, and you have conversations with them.
That's absolutely crazy.
I've had 4 members of Congress say, I'll talk to my AIPAC person. And it's literally what we call them, my AIPAC guy. I'll talk to my AIPAC guy and see if I can get him to dial those ads back.
Why have I never heard this before?
Why would they want to tell their constituents that they've basically got a buddy system with somebody who's representing a foreign country? It doesn't benefit the congressman for people to know that, so they're not going to tell you that.
So you kind of take what Jon Stewart was just saying about how the lobbyists write legislation. Like he just kind of told you out loud, we went down there to get health care for these, veterans, and the Congress asked us to write the legislation for them, which is what they do with lobbies, which is why there's a lot of money involved in lobbying things like what we're seeing on the world stage right now. And it's so clear to most people at this point. It's disgusting.